They don't get out much.
This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Trailer to Reaction. What I'm looking at today is the official trailer for DC Films' Blue Beetle, though I wanted to discuss something else for a moment, and it's the idea of superhero fatigue. It doesn't exist. It's literally a talking point with no evidence in fact. Though, to defend that point, which is silly, but to defend it, someone might say, look at the box office of movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, or Shazam, Fury of the Gods. And what we see in both of those instances aren't examples of the decline of a genre. We do see particular instances of decline. And let's look at why there's a decline in those two instances. Heck, in the comics, Ant-Man has never been a major character. And that's fine. That's not a criticism, just stating a fact. And the movies have acted accordingly. The first did well for an Ant-Man movie. The second one did a little better for an Ant-Man movie. This is not Captain America. This is not Iron Man. This is not the Black Panther. It is Ant-Man. And his ceiling is going to be significantly lower in terms of box office than the ceiling of those characters I just mentioned. So, the biggest problem with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, a movie which I saw and enjoyed, by the way, it's that it was budgeted too high for an Ant-Man movie. Which is to say, if it were budgeted at $100 million, even $150 million, I wouldn't need to comment on it because it would have done just fine. At $250 million, the same budget of a Black Panther, a Captain America movie, it's too high. Ant-Man, well, I should say there has been no evidence that Ant-Man would clear that hurdle, and it didn't in this case. That's not a shock. So that's not superhero fatigue. That's just a movie that was badly budgeted. And keep in mind, Marvel Studios have done really well budget-wise with their movies. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is an exception to that. Shazam, Fury of the Gods. The first movie came out in 2019, I want to say. The sequel came out 4 years later, in 2023. Like Ant-Man, Shazam is not a major character in the DC, well, I was about to say DCEU, but that's no longer the case. I think it's DC Universe now. In any case, Shazam is not a major character. And while I think that Dwayne Johnson not wanting to work with the character for Black Adam was a mistake, I do understand his logic. Shazam is just not up to the other characters. He's not. The way he's treated. He is akin to an Ant-Man, not a Superman or a Batman. So the idea that the latest movie underwhelmed, I think it's approaching $100 million at the box office. Now keep in mind, it took about $125 million to produce. It is nowhere near profitable, and it will not be profitable. It is a major flop. Conversely, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I just mentioned, I think is at $470 million box office-wise. It also is not doing well, but it is less of a flop than Shazam. In any case, certain movies will do weaker than others. This is the nature of cinema in general. Certain horror movies will do better than others, certain dramas will do better than others, and so on and so forth. And why that's the case is complex. Lots of factors. The cast, the director, the time of year it's released, the day it's released. There's a lot that goes into it. But suffice it to say that what we're seeing with both Shazam! Fury of the Gods and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, has nothing to do with superhero fatigue. What it has to do with is either badly budgeting a movie, Ant-Man and Wasp, Quantumania, or releasing a movie, a minor movie I might add, way too late. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which I mentioned already, was released about 4 years after the fact. If it had come 2 years, it might have performed better, especially since the budget is not that big, frankly. But 4 years was a bridge too far. So what does that have to do with Blue Beetle, you might be wondering? Blue Beetle was originally scheduled to be on HBO Max. I guess the people in charge of DC Films, James Gunn and Peter Safran, decided to release it in theaters, which implies that it is of a certain quality that is able to be released, unlike what happened with Batgirl, which to this day I do not believe was so terrible that it couldn't have been released in theaters. I honestly don't believe that. In any case, I'm familiar with the older rendition of Blue Beetle, not so much the current one. And based on what I've heard about this movie, I'm getting a very Spider-Man-centric vibe from it, which is to say it's going to be DC Universe's answer to characters like Spider-Man, for instance, in terms of being very young and inexperienced and making their way in a world that perhaps is somewhat hostile to them. In any case, let's look at the official trailer for Blue Beetle.
Excuse me, Mr. Reyes? You finished scraping the gum off that lounger or what?
Everything right now feels so out of reach.
You always land on your feet, bro. You're Jaime.
They don't get out much.
I just wanna rock.
Jenny?
God, that's my wife.
But do not open it.
You went in to get us jobs, and all you brought back was a hamburger?
Okay, I don't think it's a burger.
You haven't looked?
What the hell is that?
How did you get it to do that?
I think he likes me.
Jaime.
This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want. What the?
Host acquired.
Who said that? Okay, it's gonna be okay! Oh, space.
Re-entry systems ready.
Wait, no!
This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want.
Oh. What is going on?
I just wanna rock.
It's called the Scarab. It's some kind of world-destroying weapon. It's designed to protect its host.
This ain't what you want.
Sometimes it does what you want, and sometimes it doesn't.
Body out of here.
I think I cut a bus in half.
The Scarab chose you, but it belongs to me.
Susan Sarandon.
That low you feel for your family makes you weak.
I just wanna rock. You won't kill my dog, spending my money, don't know my side.
The universe has sent you a gift, and you have to figure out what you're gonna do with it.
That's my mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, throw up the
God,
five.
the music is irritating.
Whatever you can imagine, I can create.
Let's party.
Nice choice.
I just wanna rock.
It's like Batman stuff.
Batman's a fascist.
I just wanna rock.
That was the trailer for Blue Beetle, and yes, Batman can arguably be called a fascist. In any case, as I said, it has a very Spider-Man-esque feel to it, based on the trailer. That's not a bad thing, because as we've seen, Spider-Man has been extremely successful. Though, it also reminds me of the movies based on the Mattel toys. It's not coming to mind at the moment, but the idea is very similar to that. And it might do fine. It's a question of, like in the case of Shazam! Fury of the Gods, when it's released and its budget. From looking at that trailer, I would guess that it's somewhere in the ballpark of $100 million, maybe 150. I don't think any more than that, which is reasonable. Does that mean it will do well? Not at all. Though $150 million, if that's the case, is not bad. $100 million would be better. Though if Blue Beetle doesn't do well, prepare yourself once again for calls of superhero fatigue, which, as I've already explained, doesn't exist. Though what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Trailer to Reaction. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow. Peace.